Vibha Kagzi, and I'm the founder of reachiv.com. At ReachIV, we help students aspiring towards top tier schools and careers in different domains reach their aspirations. And the series we started is called House of Experts. And our goal is to get experts much like Tanuj to come on board and just share their journeys. So you can get a little bit of a sneak preview into the life of an expert and learn from his experiences and not make the same mistakes that someone made. So without much ado, I'm going to first introduce Tanuj. Tanuj is very well known in the media and entertainment space. As you all know, he's the founder at Ellipsis Entertainment and has under his belt a series of successful hits such as Lootera, Neerja, Tumhari Sulu, Why Cheat India. Tanuj, I have seen all your movies, first day, first show in the theater, every one of the ones
Thank you.
that I just mentioned, and I loved each one of them for obviously varied reasons. Tanuj was also the CEO at Balaji Entertainment, so we'd love to get a little bit of your, understanding of that business, the television business, from you. And prior to that, he also was working in London for a while. Tanuj also has an MBA, and I'm going to dig a little bit deeper into his MBA. More than all his accolades, I just want to personally say that I've not known Tanuj since I was, I think, 3 or maybe 3.5 or something. And
Yeah.
I just remember Tanuj being the most adorable childhood friend. And more than anything, Tanuj, it just gives me real personal joy to see, where you've reached today. And I
Thank
remember
you.
you being extremely intelligent, and I know the sky is the limit for you. So here we are, and thanks to you, Tanuj, for taking on the show. So quick question.
My pleasure, Vibha. Yeah.
So since, we run an education company, obviously my first question to you is going to talk about education. So I know you went to Cathedral, you have this MBA. If you could just walk us through, your educational journey, why you decided to, go down the path you did in terms of, studying what you did, and why did you top it up then with an MBA?
Sure. So I began my journey at the Cathedral School, which as every cathedralite will agree, is one of the best schools that the city has, or possibly in the country. After I completed high school at Cathedral, I went to Sydenham, which is, or rather was, another prestigious college in Mumbai. But once you've sort of graduated from Cathedral, it's really difficult to adjust to a college like Sydenham. So the 3 years in Sydenham were not it was a great college, but really not the best years for me. I realized I wasn't really cut out for Bombay colleges. But eventually I had to complete my graduation. And then I ultimately knew that I wanted to do an MBA, but it was crucial to build up some work ex before, going abroad, for the MBA. So I decided to sort of work briefly in Mumbai, and believe it or faint, I actually began my career working for an IT company which specialized in end-to-end solutions for the pharmaceutical sector.
Okay.
And I was thoroughly bored doing that, because that really wasn't my line of work or my passion at all. But that's when I simultaneously sort of began my career in the media. I sort of started writing for the print media. I got very, very deeply involved with the print media. One thing led to another. And and before I said Jack Robinson, I knew that eventually there was something I wanted to do in the entertainment and media sector. At that age, I wasn't clear and certain about what exactly it would be, but I knew that industry had to be my calling, basically. So, but then the MBA was the immediate priority for me, because I was certain that I wanted to educate myself, and it wasn't just about getting into a job and working, but also about educating oneself, which I think is crucial regardless of whichever sector you decide to get in. So I went abroad. I went to the UK. Did my MBA. I in fact briefly interned for British Airways. Whilst I was there, and then decided to come back to Mumbai and began my career with Mr. Kumar Mangalam Birla's company, Applause Entertainment, which had just started out back then with a film called Black, which was directed by Sanjay Bansali.
Yeah.
And that's when my journey started, because I was with Applause for about a year and a half. And then Ronnie Screwvala had started UTV, and I sort of made my way into UTV thereafter. I was in the creative department at UTV. There were some really exciting projects that we did. Before Ronnie and my immediate boss, Ashoka Hola, decided to ask me to relocate to London. And when I asked them why, they said, well, we pretty much want to take UTV international, and we can trust you with our pounds and dollars. So I said, why me? I know nothing about international distribution,
Right.
So they were like, well, nor do we. So it's time for you to sort of go up the learning curve and set things up. And that's when I really started living like a gypsy, living out of a suitcase, doing my Bombay, Dubai, London, Dubai, Bombay flights, literally twice a month for 10 months. In those days, there was no Wi-Fi. So I was literally working out of cyber cafes below my hotel. And it was really, really difficult because I was thrown into the deep sea, literally with no understanding of the business. But I'm absolutely delighted that, and I'm thankful to Ronnie that he threw me into the deep sea, because that's when I learned how to swim. And we set up our offices within no time and started distributing Bollywood films internationally. So I think that was really the first big experience in my life way back in 2004, actually. And then one thing led to another, Vibha. I was then asked to join TV18, which is now Viacom 18.
Okay.
I was with them for about 4.5 years, based in Mumbai.
Okay.
Based in London. And then Ekta called me and asked me to relocate to Mumbai and head up Balaji, which is just sort of started its motion picture journey. So so that's in short my corporate journey, so to speak, till I decided to turn entrepreneur.
Just want to acknowledge Siddharth Malhotra. He's here and he's been requesting a couple of times that he wants to see you, and he's also taking your lenses. Maybe a little
I know. I'm just struggling. I don't know what to do, but I'm trying to see if.
Okay. So while you're trying, I'm just gonna go on. So what I want to understand is, why media and entertainment? You're so intelligent. You had experience in varied fields. You had this education that could basically get you into pretty much any career. Why media and entertainment?
Well, media and entertainment also requires intelligence. And I think it's a myth, in the world, where people think, oh, the media and entertainment is just for people who are bohemian and people who are licentious and people, who are otherwise not intelligent. But I strongly disagree. I think, the media and entertainment business is really as demanding, in terms of one's mental faculties as any other business, for that matter, because it's a business at the end of the day, right?
Right.
But eventually, I think the best situation for any human being should really be about being able to convert one's passion into one's profession. And I tried pursuing my chartered accountancy course, and I ducked twice whilst doing my intermediate. I realized I wasn't cut out for it. I worked in a pharma IT company, like I said to you. I was thoroughly bored of my skull over there. And then I said, listen, let me just not waste time doing things that I don't want to do. When I got this offer to work at Applause, which is Mr. Birla's company, I took it head on. And the journey started ever since. And I think there's been no looking back, touch wood ever since.
Okay, cool. All right. Thanks for explaining that. So, how a lot of people, especially, in India, we're all movie obsessed, right? In a city like Bombay, Bollywood is what we all sort of grow up dreaming and thinking about. So I know a lot of people are just, allured by the razzmatazz and the jazz of this industry. What do you think it really takes to cut your teeth in the industry? Obviously, what we see on screen and what goes on behind the screens is very different. So what's your advice?
So I think the one thing that's really important for people to know is that what happens behind the scenes is very different from what you see on screen.
Sure.
Now, for the good or for the bad, most people only end up seeing what is on screen. And the picture you see on screen is really glamorous and colorful and vibrant and aspirational, right? But what happens behind the screens is a different story altogether. What happens behind the screen is, what you see behind the screen is a hardcore, unglamorous, staid, boring office environment, which is all about Excel sheets, number crunching, strategy sessions, planning, spreadsheets, sales calls, marketing calls, etc., etc. So it's like any other office. Right? Absolutely. It's like any other business for that matter, So I think it's really crucial for people to know that our business is glamorous, but I think we leave the glamorous side of the business to the glamour people to do. We're the unglamorous people in the business. We're behind the scenes, and I think and I think I wouldn't like it any other way. I mean, very often I have people ask me, "Oh, don't you want to act?" I said, "Never, never, never, never." It hasn't even crossed my mind. And I wouldn't even dare of such harakiri, because I think people would laugh at me if I ever thought I would.
Sure.
But we're quite happy doing what we're doing behind screen, and it's an extremely challenging job because, as you know, it's an industry which is based on a lot of risk. It's an industry based on on people's attitudes, tastes, preferences, and wants. We have to constantly keep abreast of the changing market scenario. Audience responses change, audience attitudes change, their tastes change. So it's something we really need to be sort of abreast with. So if you're not on the curve, you're not on the ball, you run the risk of getting obsolete very soon.
Okay. So it sounds like any other business, right? You keep up with
Right.
trends, you're constantly figuring out the math behind your decisions. It sounds like every other business to me.
Absolutely. I mean, Vibha, like you said, there is horizon planning. Like I said, there's horizon planning over here. There is, marketing planning over here. There is, planning of risks. There is risk assessment. You're planning your financial models. Everything and anything that you need to do to run any other business is applicable in the media and entertainment business. It's just that because we have a very glamorized, hyperbolic, exaggerated picture of the business, we tend to think it's a cakewalk. And I think that's really what I want to warn a lot of people who are on this live session right now, that please don't come into this business because you think of it as a very easy and glamorous business. I think that's a huge misconception, unless of course you want to act or you want to model. But if you're interested in getting into the business side of this industry, you need to be as intelligent as you need to be in any other walk of life.
Right. Okay, fine. So it's very glamorous from the front end, but from the back end, it's just like any other organization.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Sounds good. I'll take a question here from the real Chiru, who says, so what is the toughest part of your job?
I think the toughest part of my job, and I'm sure I see a couple of producers who are also on the live session as you and I are chatting. I see them all signing on. And I think a lot of them will agree with me that the toughest part of our job is to pick and choose the right content. I think as producers, we need to be magnets for talent. We need to be able to spot, a subject that we think will resonate with the audience, a subject that is commercially viable, a subject that is creatively exciting. And given that the audiences today are so evolved, so educated, they're so exposed to various media, various platforms, various shows, we run the risk, like I said, of getting obsolete very, very soon. So I think really for a producer, the big challenge is to be able to spot a story or spot a subject which is going to be clutter breaking, which is new, which is progressive, which is entertaining and commercial at the same time, and which is going to enthrall the audiences. So I think that's really where our challenge as producers lies.
Okay. Another question I have is like, what do you look for? If you get a script in hand, what are some of the criteria you think of before you make a decision whether you want to go ahead with a certain project? What are some of the factors to consider?
Well, I think most importantly, we need to realize as producer that we're not making the film for ourselves, right? So if it's a film that we're going to sit and watch in our living room, it's probably the wrong film we're making. We need to be very realistic about who we're making the film for. Is the film going to fly with a larger audience, regardless of whether we like it or we don't like it? So just because something is your favorite or something reads well to you, it may not necessarily read well for the rest of the country, right? Sure. So I think we need to keep our personal biases aside, most importantly. And we need to be sure about who we're catering this film for, who are we appealing to, who is our target audience, do we genuinely believe there to be a target audience for this film, and then literally work backwards in terms of financial viability. At what budget should we make this film? What are the recoveries for this film? How are we going to make money back on this film or on this web series? So I think there's a huge amount of financial planning that goes in, and if you get your economics right, that's literally half your battle won, and I'm sure that's true of any other industry as well. It's all about economics and financials at the end of the day, Sure. So there's a lot of science and thought that goes into putting a project together. It's not just about getting a good script and casting it and going to Switzerland to shoot. I mean, that's a very myopic way of looking at the entertainment business. It's also about number crunching. It's also about knowing whether it's viable. It's also about designing it in a manner such that you're going after the target audience that you want to go after.
Okay, sure. So it sounds like a lot of sort of just having your feet on the ground and understanding the customer base.
No, absolutely. It's like the FMCG business, Vibha. So, I mean, just like, soaps and shampoos and cosmetic products, etc., do an extensive amount of market research in terms of who, their items are going to go out to. We pretty much do the same. So believe it or faint, we actually do a lot of, when I say we, I mean the industry at large, or at least a couple of players in the industry, do a lot of market research, actually. So there are specialist research agencies in the business who conduct sample researches at various stages in the life cycle of a movie. It could be at the script stage, it could be at the production stage, it could be at the pre-release stage. When you're always doing, research to sort of find out, is your script resonating with people? Is your marketing campaign tracking? Has your trailer worked? Are your songs working? Are people liking the promise of your film? Should you reorient your marketing campaign? Maybe you should tone down the violence and up the drama. Should you maybe play up the star element a little more? Should you maybe play up the songs a little more? So there's a lot of science that goes into it, because sometimes I might feel, hey, let's play up, the drama element, whereas someone else might, whereas the country might feel, hey, we actually are liking the whole vibe and the mood and the musical aspect of the film, and I'm not playing that up enough, So we're constantly doing research to see what aspects of the product there are which are appealing to a larger hoi polloi, and I think that's really what we as producers should not get blinded to. We cannot get blinded, by our own personal prejudices and biases. We need to sort of have our pulse on what the audience wants.
Okay, very critical. And I'm sure in a country of 1.3 billion people in India, and then of course, if you're targeting the rest of the global markets, that's a very, very complex problem to deal with. But you've obviously done it successfully, Tanuj. So what do you think has been, the hallmark of your success? The films I mentioned, Neerja, Tumhari Sulu, Lootera, etc. All of them, well. So what do you think?
Well, I have to be honest and say, I've released 37 films so far in my career, which in different capacities. There were some films that were outright acquisitions. There were some films that were distributed by us. There were some films that were created and produced by us ground up. But regardless, in whichever capacity I was associated, and it's not like we had a smooth sailing all through. There were rough days as well, right? I mean, not every day is a Sunday. So, we had our ups and downs, which is part and parcel of the business. But I think every failure we had, sort of taught us what not to do on the next gig. And I think that's really, really important, because I know where, at least on a personal level, I'm very, very mindful about my past learnings now, and I know what not to do. That's not to say, everything is foolproof. I mean, you go through learnings every other day. But I think what my, my career of 17 years, over 37 films, has taught me is that no matter how much science you put into things, no matter how much research you do, no matter how much financial forecasting and planning you put in, eventually nothing works more than your intuition and instinct. Eventually you need to follow that. You need to go with that. So I remember when we were doing the Dirty Picture, and I'm sure Ekta will agree with me on this, when we started doing Dirty Picture, we had a lot of naysayers who came and said to us, oh my God, why are you doing a film like this? This is really risky. And why Vidya Balan, she's not cut out for something like this. And we were really in two minds initially, but then Ekta and I both, and really more credit to Ekta on this one, really believed in the material and said, Tanuj, you know what? Trust me, I believe in this. I understand where you're coming from commercially, but this is a leap of faith we got to take. And I said, listen, I'm going to back you and stand by you all the way through. And I think the rest is history. So sometimes science and numbers might tell you something else, and logic might tell you something else, but your intuition and your gut tells you something, completely different. So eventually we got to realize that whilst this is a big business, but it's also a creative business. And eventually a creative business means you need to follow your passion. You need to follow your leap of faith. You need to follow your vibe. And I think that's what makes our business so unique, unlike a lot of other businesses which are hardcore based on numbers and facts and research. I think our business also has that little, the little intuition, the little soft element. Absolutely, which is really sort of hard to, sort of explain or quantify.
Sure, absolutely. Well, in a lot of creative fields, we see that's a little X factor, and that's what really differentiates the wheat from the chaff. So, but you talked about 17 years, 37 films, and some of the core learnings. So if you were going to just maybe talk about 1, 2, or 3 of the biggest mistakes, or like let's not call them mistakes. Let's call them learning. So, what do you think if you were going to give advice to people saying, okay, guys, if you're going to make a movie, these are 3 things not to do?
I think for everybody who wants to be a content creator, be it a television show, be it a web series, be it a movie, I think the one thing I would tell everyone is don't embark on a flight of fantasy. Right? It's good to dream, but it's foolish to fantasize. Right? I hope the
Right.
viewers here can sort of get the difference between the dreaming and the fantasizing bit. I think it's important to dream, but it's important to sort of couple your dream with a little bit of logic, a little bit of science, because very often I have people coming and telling me, oh sir, trust us, we know this is going to work and this is fantastic and
Right.
we just know it in our bones it's going to work. But when I ask them very pointed questions on the material or on the future of the material in terms of its commerce, they really have no concrete answers to give me. So I think the first things first, follow your instinct, but don't be foolish about it, right? I mean, by all means, follow your gut, but make sure your gut is backed by science at some level, so you're making an informed, educated decision about what you're doing. So I think that's the first thing I'd say. I think the second really important thing, which I'm sure applies, Vibha, to your business or to any other business for that matter, but more specifically in our business as well, is that you need to be a people's manager. You need to be a person with people skills. You need to have interpersonal skills, and whilst I'm not saying that's a rule of thumb, but that's a prerequisite, it's a hugely beneficial factor, right? Because our business is very PR driven, it's very perception driven, very people centric, so if you're not great at managing egos, you're not great at managing people, you're not great at managing personalities, you're probably in the wrong business. So if you're an introvert or you're a geek or you just don't have that ability to sort of thaw with people, then I don't think this might be the right profession for you. And I think that's something I learned pretty early in my career. Not that I was ever an introvert, but I sort of realized that I have to get increasingly extroverted and increasingly out there. If I have to really sort of be around in the space, so I think that's the second important thing to sort of get out of this business. The third most important thing I think that people need to bear in mind is please don't enter this business because you're just enamored by it. Right? Please don't get into it because you just find it glamorous and you think you're going to become an overnight star and you're going to be famous. That's the wrong reason to get into the business, and that reason sort of compels you to doing a lot of things that you shouldn't be doing, or sort of compels you to sort of maneuvering your journey in the wrong way, right? Get into it because you're genuinely passionate about it. Get into it because you genuinely feel strongly for it, but not because you suddenly want to become an overnight star and that's your passport to to fame and fortune. So I think these are the 3 big things that I've learned.
Okay, sure. I think that's very helpful. I think people are definitely especially in the media and entertainment space, we see people entering for all the wrong reasons. And I'm glad you've sort of busted the myth and, just given us the harsh realities of how complex a business this is.
Yes.
Since you were speaking about the financials of running this business, can you give us a simple walkthrough of the P&L of this business? Like what's on the expense side and what's on the revenue side? What does your P&L look like?
Well, what's on the expense side is, your production costs, your marketing costs, your advertising costs, your actor costs, your talent costs, distribution costs, the cost of getting your stuff into cinemas. I think that's on the expenditure side, Vibha. On the income side, on the revenue side, are basically your streams of revenue, which is your theatrical revenues, your cinema revenues, revenues coming from the international markets, television revenues, digital revenues, music revenues, in-film branding revenues, revenues from ancillary rights. So these sort of make up the P part, of the P&L.
And from the revenue part, what are like the 2 biggest components typically?
Well, that's a very valid question, and that's a very good question you've asked, Vibha, actually, because in our industry, unlike a lot of other industries, the key revenue drivers literally seem to be changing every other year, which actually makes our business so much more uncertain, but at the same time so exciting and dynamic. Because up and until a couple of years back, I mean, television revenues were really, feeding into our bottom lines. Suddenly, 5 years later, we see, OTT with the advent of Amazon and Netflix and Hotstar, Voot, Sony Live, all these sort of platforms emerging on the horizon, suddenly they're contributing a big element of our revenue pie, right?
Yeah.
Of course, the good old theatrical business is never going to go out of fashion, contrary to what people think. And suddenly there's been a lot of chitter chatter in the last couple of weeks that,
Sure.
now with theaters shutting down, with OTT gaining precedence, people aren't going to go to cinemas. And I think that's really short-sighted, very myopic thinking, because I think cinemas in India are a community experience. People go to cinemas in our country because it's an outing, it's a social outing. So I don't think that's ever going to go out of fashion. I think it's just a matter of time before, things get corrected and we sort of resume our cinema going habits all over again. But our revenues just keep changing. You just don't know, which is going to be the big source to rely on, every other year,
Okay.
But the important thing is once you realize that, then I think what is crucial is to sort of be mindful of where your bread and butter is coming from, and then sort of consciously work towards targeting your content towards that bread and butter.
Okay, so firstly, you're optimistic about the space overall. You feel like the cinemas
Very,
are...
very, absolutely. So the one thing I want to say, Vibha, is that and I think everybody will agree with me on this, is movies, television, web content is recession proof. It's
No,
depression
absolutely,
proof,
yes, yes.
right? So you watch a movie when you're depressed. You watch a show when you're
In
upset.
fact, it
So
spikes up, right? Like most of us are now sitting at home
exactly.
consuming a lot more content. So,
In fact, OTT platforms have never had it better.
of
I mean,
course,
I think the
yes.
subscriptions and the viewership that they were gunning for has suddenly,
Skyrocketed. Yeah,
skyrocketed and come onto them, come on their tables on a platter, on a silver platter
sure,
virtually,
absolutely, yes.
So
Absolutely. So we have a question here from Sabahat who asks, are you going to start releasing movies directly on Amazon or any other platforms? Since the
that's already
theaters...
started, Vibha and Sabaz, that's already started actually. In fact, I think the first direct acquisition, which is going to be Gulabo Sitabo, is going to release very soon on Amazon, followed by Vidya Balan, Shakuntala. And in fact, there are at least another 7 or 8 movies whose names I cannot divulge, but there are about 7 or 8 other big ticket, medium ticket films that are going to soon premiere on OTT platforms in the next couple of months, which I think is the most exciting part of our business, where rules and dynamics are changing on a constant basis. I think those good old rules that films should only release in cinemas, I think those rules are not long gone out of the window. I think times are changing, the landscape is changing, and I think with time, I think OTT will prove to be a very credible, worthy alternative to cinemas as well. And I think it's a fantastic time for content creators like us, because our job is to create content. Now, whether it gets deployed on a digital platform, whether it gets deployed on television, whether it gets deployed in a cinema, I think that's really incidental, right? I mean, it doesn't really matter. As content creators, you have to create content.
Okay.
But
So,
yes, to answer your question, movies will start coming on OTT a lot. In fact, that's already started happening. Netflix has already started releasing a lot of movies which are straight to digital premieres. And in fact, that's a very prevalent concept in the West, by the way. I mean,
okay.
actors like Adam Sandler, etc., have virtually built parallel economies and careers by releasing their movies on Netflix, right? So
And
I
you're
think
personally
that's a
excited
trend here
about
to
this.
stay.
You're personally excited about this as well, and you
I'm
subscribe
very
to this.
excited. I'm very excited, Vibha, also because what the digital medium allows you to do is to express yourself without censorship, right? So we're not bound by governmental norms, by censorship norms. We're not bound by theatrical dictates. We're not bound by, film ko thoda aur commercial bana do, ya film ko thoda aise kar do, ya waise kar do, ya item song dal do, ya char gaane dal do. We're not really bound by all those old-fashioned orthodox rules. I mean, on digital, you can really tell the story that you want to tell. And I truly believe that every good story deserves to be told, right? So I think that's the big advantage that OTT has given us, where we're given the freedom of expression, we're given the power of expression. We get to enjoy the power of expression in the truest sense of the phrase.
Sure. Okay. I have a question about, where do you lie on the spectrum of like, this is a good film with a good message, and like how much of, as a producer, are you focused on a social message in your movie, like you had in White Heat India,
Yeah.
versus like the money, right? It's like, where do you stand on this balance between money and messaging? Because it's in your movies, I see hints of messaging, and then obviously some of the films are just outright like straight up money makers. So where do you stand on this seesaw?
Well, so that's a very good question, Vibha. So when I was working for various companies, my objective was money, 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 because eventually when you're in a job, it's your responsibility to monetize your films and to make sure that whatever is a cash cow, is basically what's going to get you your bonus and what's going to get you in good stead within the company, right?
Sure,
So
right.
my objective was purely money. I would look at the film purely from a bottom line perspective, especially when I was living abroad and acquiring films for the international market. I would really scowl upon my head office if they ever gave me a film which didn't have international potential, regardless of how good or bad that film might have been, right? But now I think over the years with the changing landscape and now having turned entrepreneur myself and having turned into a content creator, yes, of course, money is important, and we're not sitting and making films that only two and a half of us can sit and watch in our living rooms. We're very clear we're making a film for a commercial audience, and money is important, but we're also absolutely certain that we don't want to do a film or don't want to do a series which goes against our grain and our ethos or goes contrary to what we stand for, right? So
Sure.
both my partner Atul Kasbekar and myself, I think we both, I'd like to say, I think sort of are synonymous with educated sensibilities. We are not typically filmy.
Right.
We're from South Bombay. We read a lot. We imbibe a lot. And I
Sure.
think not that we look down upon, the hardcore commercial cinema. There's room for that. And I'm sure, everyone who's doing it, is great and they have a right to do it. But I just think as far as we're concerned, we'd like to do commercial cinema, but yet at the same time, be mindful that it needs to have a slight alternate bent to it. It needs to have something unconventional in it. It needs to have something, a little X factor which hasn't seen before. It needs to
Sure.
be a genre breaker in a sense. So when we did Nirja, we were excited because there was nothing on the hijack
Sure.
scene out in the Indian market. We did Tumhari Sulu because for long there hadn't been a film in the Rishikesh Mukherjee happy family
Right.
slice of life housewife sort of space. When we did Why Cheat India, regardless of how the film fared at the box office, we were excited and we still are proud of it because it tackled a
Oh,
very, very
it
important.
was a very, very, yeah, very key topic that you picked on, and I think the movie was
Exactly, about
really,
education scams.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, there's so much of corruption in our education system. And I think
absolutely.
something, as socially responsible filmmakers, it was really important for us to tell a story like that.
Yeah, yeah,
Even I think our next couple of films are very commercial, but at the same time, will have some sort of a subliminal, subtle, subconscious takeaway for the audience. What we're not out to do is to shove a social message down your throat. We're
right.
not interested in preaching. We're not interested in sermonizing. We're not making documentaries.
Sure.
But we definitely want people to sort of get entertained and educated at the same time.
Okay, so you want to keep a message element in it, but obviously, it is ultimately it is your business. So you obviously,
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even use the word message, Vibha. I'd say some sort of a takeaway. I mean, some food for thought, something to sort of think about, something to sort of munch over. And we'd be happy if our movie becomes a conversation starter.
sure. Okay, and all the four that you mentioned have definitely, I've had many conversations about all your movies. So if that was your goal, then you definitely did meet the goal. I saw a
Thank you.
question here about someone asking about low budget. So for someone who's a first time producer, right? Like, what's a good budget to start with, and how should someone, the first time producer, think about the ROI on his investment? If he's going to put an X, then what's the sort of realistic
So,
expectation?
So I'll tell you, Vibha, the big malaise, the big illness, the big disease that sometimes stalks our industry is a lot of new, young, aspiring producers and content creators who want to get into the business for the right or for the wrong reasons. Don't obviously end up getting institutional money or studio money or corporate money, but are desperate to make a film and therefore end up hoodwinking and conning NRIs or individual investors or high net worth investors and make a film for the sake of it, believing that it will magically find its way to theaters and it will magically get sold off everywhere. And there are dozens and dozens of films every year who just lie in the cans and never see the light of the day, and that's obviously because you've approached the business in a completely uneducated way. So I think what's really important for first timers and for aspiring producers and content creators to realize is please not get into the business without thinking about the end result. You need to know how you're going to deploy your project. You need to know where you're going to deploy it. What is your marketing plan? Who are you making it for? Is there potential for it? Work retrospectively, work backwards. Don't work prospectively. Don't think कि चलो एक बार मैं कर देता हूँ फिर बाद में देखेंगे. Time and again, I have friends calling me up and saying, hey, listen, you know what? We want your time. If you could just help one of our friends out who's made a film and doesn't know what to do with it. If
Right.
it's just lying in the cans.
Right.
And I think and I have no sympathy for such people really, because all you've done is you've blown up hard-earned money, which probably
Right.
belongs to you or to someone else, and now you're sitting on it, not knowing what to do. So I think you deserve your fate.
So you're saying plan it all, like a lot of foresight, and think through the whole project.
Absolutely. Like Vibha, it's a bit like any other business, right? You always think about the end result before you start off. But what happens in our industry, unfortunately, is a lot of people start off without knowing what their destination is. And I think that's where somewhere the business gets a little bit of a bad name when people complain, oh, it's a very risky business. Oh, I was very disillusioned. But you were disillusioned and you faced risk because you never thought about it. So how can you blame the business for it, right?
Sure. Because I guess people, so it's more passion play, right? For some people, it's like, this is my passion, I want to make a movie, but then they haven't thought through the commercials and the reality of
Exactly.
it.
So when you operate on passion and without thinking, I call that foolishness, right? So you
Sure.
have to eventually pay a price for your foolishness.
Yeah, sure. I can see where the MBA and that whole sort of mindset and business training comes extremely
Hmm.
handy in your world, because that's, a lot of what you've been saying is basically what the MBA has taught me, and I'm sure it taught you as well. I have a quick question on, show business, right? Everyone wants to be in show business, but it comes with this, dirty reputation, promiscuity, and you know what I'm talking about. So,
Hmm.
is this true? Like you're an insider, 17 years, you know what goes on.
Well, I
So,
mean, I mean, does it happen? Of course, it happens, right? So I'm not going to,
deny it.
beat around the bush, or, I'm not going to lie about it, right? It happens, but hey, it happens in every business. If you tell me it doesn't happen in advertising, I know you'd be lying to me. If
Sure.
you tell me it doesn't happen in the financial services, it doesn't happen in aviation, you'd be lying to me. It happens everywhere. It's just that in our industry, because we're always under the media, we're always under media magnification, under the media scanner. It just gets blown out of proportion when it comes into our business, but it's pretty prevalent everywhere. But like I said, you know what, really to each his own, right? I mean, nobody's passing any moral judgments or any value judgments,
Sure.
anymore. And honestly, also, Vibha, it happens at very, very low levels, if I may say so, at levels where very often even producers like us aren't even privy as to what is happening at lower down casting levels, or you have some casting coordinator, or you have a middleman or an agent, who's running some sort of a racket or whatever, and you as a producer would never find out what's happening 20 notches below you, right?
Oh, really? Okay.
So a lot of things we never sort of find out, and we're sure it happens. But like I said, I mean, it's common to every business, and not that I'm justifying it, but I'm certainly not moralistic about it at all, because I think everyone has a right to conduct their lives and conduct their way of working the way they want to make it happen. If that's how the cookie crumbles for you,
Sure.
so be it. It's just not. It's just one can't be a prude about it. But definitely, I mean, if you feel that you're one of those prudish types who's very who gets very easily shocked by things, and who's not evolved or emancipated or progressive enough, then perhaps you're trying to bark up the wrong tree and get into the wrong business.
Okay. So you're saying it exists just like any other business, but I mean, I guess it just needs a more liberal sort of outlook to survive, and sort of cut your teeth in this industry, huh? Okay. I'm just going to ask you a last question, since I know I promised let you go in about 30 minutes. So just to close with, where do you see this industry evolving to? What are some of the emerging trends? And you said it changes every year. What I look for changes every year. So what's coming up? Where do you see trends going forward? There you are. Okay, I think he had to exit. I don't know. I think his network was a little bit choppy. I'm sorry, guys. I'm going to apologize on Tanuj's behalf. But I think we managed to squeeze a lot of juicy and interesting facts about production, about the media and entertainment space. I'm going to save the recording of this on the Reach IV stories for 24 hours. You'll see it on the stories. And then, of course, we'll save it to IGTV. So you'll have access to it. It'll also go on our YouTube channel. Thank you all for watching. I hope this was helpful. Our series will continue next week. Next week, we have a lawyer and social activist, Abha Singh, who's going to be joining us. And if there's any other career that you are specifically interested in, please DM us at Reach IV or DM me at Vibha Kagzi. And we'd love to see what we can do for you guys. The House of Experts is a show that essentially focuses on a range of careers. So it's not necessarily only media and entertainment. But if there's anything you'd like to learn, please let us know. If you want to discuss your study abroad and career goals with us, please reach out to us at help@reachiv.com. I think Tanuj is back. We're just going to say a quick thank you to him. Thanks, Shloka. Thanks, Rohit. We're just waiting for him. Thanks for looking forward. Hello?
Hi, sorry, we got disconnected.
We got disconnected. I was just going to ask you, last question, in terms of, where do you see trends in this industry? You said every year something changes, right? Every year what you've got your eyes on moves. So where do you think the ball is going to move to next?
I think the ball is really going to move to more liberal, more progressive, more clutter breaking content. I think only those content creators will survive who are constantly evolving and who are constantly reinventing themselves. You can't get away by conning and duping the audience anymore. I think the audiences have really grown and really evolved. So I think those who are ahead of the curve and those who are on the ball and those who are completely in sync with audience tastes are the ones who are going to succeed, because eventually this is a creative business, like I said, and no amount of packaging and no amount of window dressing is going to work if your heart isn't strong and your core isn't strong of your content. That is, there's no way it's going to get success.
So when you're seeing more sort of liberal content, I mean, what's left to explore
Well,
when you talk about liberal?
Well, so by liberal, I don't necessarily mean stuff that is, bold or stuff that is licentious, but just by liberal, I also mean new genres, new stories, new books, new thoughts, new ideas, new ways of delivering content, new formats of shooting, new techniques, new technology. I think it's a combination of all of that. One has to dabble with new ways of creating content.
Okay, great. That's very helpful. I know I promised you 6:15, and at 6:15, I'm going to let you go. So thank you so much,
Thank
Tanuj. This
you.
was absolutely fantastic. And people, I already signed off, so people know the sign off message. So thanks a lot, Tanuj, and I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, Vibha. Thank you.
Thank you. See you. Okay, guys, this time we're going to end this for real. Yes, Merkaba, cinema is transforming into more realistic and sensitive content. I especially like the point about playing with different technologies and different medium and treatments for content. I think that was a very unique takeaway. And I also like the way he just sort of broke down the balance sheet and gave us an insight into what does the producer really look for. So lots of great takeaways. I know if I was exploring this field, I would have definitely got a lot of insight. So thank you all for joining once again, and we will see you next Saturday, 5:30, with lawyer and social activist Abha Singh live with us. Take care, guys. I'm going to end the session now.